Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show that covers all things marketing. The GSMC Marketing News Podcast gives you the latest marketing news, from what major businesses have planned for the coming year to the newest trends in advertising, from podcasts, digital and streaming, to the old standbys of radio, television, and billboards. Whether you're a marketing agent or a business trying to expand your brand, you've come to the right place. The GSMC Marketing News Podcast starts now.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie, and on today's episode, we are talking about distractions. Right now, we are in the middle of a pandemic lockdown. I am sure that a lot of you, especially those who work in the marketing world, are having to deal with this lockdown by having to work at home. And although there are many great things that come with working from home, you definitely end up spending less money. You don't have to go on transit anymore. Your commute is a whole lot shorter. And when you're done for the day, you can just go crawl into bed, or in the morning, you don't really have to get dressed. You can just start work. So there are so many great things that come with working from home, but there are also a lot of negatives, the main one being distractions. I know for me, a really big hurdle I have had to overcome during this lockdown has been to not get distracted during work hours, not to be playing on my phone too much just because the boss isn't there, not to be watching or listening to a podcast too intensely because your boss isn't there. But I think there have been a couple tips and tricks that I have learned that have really helped me focus on my work in the marketing world. And here's the thing, guys. The ones we're going to talk about today, I have 10 different distractions, and we're going to talk about how to overcome them. But the interesting thing is that these distractions usually actually still exist even when you're in an office environment. They are meant to be distractions specifically for the marketing world, because in our industry, because it is more of a creative industry, there are plenty of opportunities for us to get distracted and sidetracked rather than focusing on our actual goal. So we are going to be discussing 10 different distractions that can come up in your marketing world on a day-to-day basis with your work. But we are also going to talk about how you can fight those distractions and how you can be a little bit more productive and get all of your work done by the end of the day. And hopefully you'll be able to take these tips and tricks with you into your work life office once all of this is over and you're back to being in a cubicle or in an open space office. I do not know where you work. If you work in an open concept office, I apologize, because I can tell you how much that freaking sucks. It is filled with distractions. So maybe we'll do a part 2 of this podcast once we are all back into the office mentality, because there are separate distractions that come with an office life as well. For now, though, I would just love to thank each and every one of you for listening to this podcast. And if you could do me the biggest favor in the entire world, and please subscribe. I love this podcast. I love recording it. I love researching it. And overall, I just really love listening to the GSMC Podcast Network. They have so many different podcasts and so much different content that you can listen to and interact with. And I really love that you have picked this podcast to listen to. And if you love it, if you're enjoying it, then let me know by showing us some love and subscribing. Okay, everyone, let's talk about what is new in the marketing world. I love checking in with what is going on in the marketing world, because I think it's really important to know what the big companies are doing and how they are handling situations that we are all definitely also going through. Because, hey, if Disney has to deal with the coronavirus, they're probably finding the best way to deal with the coronavirus. So it's important to check in with some of these bigger companies. Our first news story is that Disney has shut down Club Penguin due to a copyright claim. Club Penguin Online was one of the largest Club Penguin fan servers shut down last week. The Walt Disney Company issued a Digital Millennium Copyright Act, a DMCA, takedown notice earlier the week, instructing the site to stop all of their online interactions with Club Penguin. Club Penguin Online was an unlicensed revival of the popular Disney-owned children's social network, and it is now one of the largest fan replicas of the game, occurring over 8 million users over the last 2 years. In a blog post that has now been removed, Club Penguin Online wrote that the game would no longer be running after May 2020 as a result of a copyright claim. The notice, which is available through the nonprofit Lumen database, says the site is an unauthorized version of the Club Penguin game and contains infringing copyright content. In the statement, they also wrote, if anyone does try to revive the game, it'll be extremely difficult now, as you'll have to worry about Disney, and in all honesty, it isn't worth it, the admin wrote. So this is an example of, although everything is going on in the world, although Disney is being impacted by the coronavirus, they're still on their watch game. Nothing's getting past them. So I just think this is an important reminder for everyone to double check your copyright claims, make sure you are not infringing on anyone else's content, and that you are not stealing anyone's content. Obviously, I am sure that you are aware if you're stealing something like Disney's content, like Club Penguin was, but it is definitely important to double check, and also important to make sure that you have systems in place if people steal your content, and how you plan to fight against that, because it could happen. You could create something really great and really special, but it could be generic enough that other companies might be able to steal it. So it's very important to always just have systems in place to ensure that your content remains your content. Our second news story is that Facebook has announced a new feature, avatars. Facebook and their new feature, avatars, are totally taking over the social media and marketing game right now. You can create your avatar and use it as a sticker in the Facebook stories, comments, and more. You'll be able to drop it in comments when you're talking to your friends, and it'll be like a little digital version of yourself being like, hey, I thought this was really funny. So here's how you do it. On your profile in the mobile app, tap the 3 horizontal lines in the bottom right corner of the screen. Scroll down and click the See More, and then click on Avatars, and then click Next. From there, you can customize your avatar as much or as little as you want. Even after that, it becomes even simpler just to drop them in comments, post them on stories, and have fun little conversations with your friends. Guys, I think Facebook absolutely timed the release of this feature perfectly, because people are just bored enough right now to actually use it. I think if this had come out during any other May long weekend, for anybody who's in Canada, it's May long weekend. But if this had come out during any other spring or summer season, people would not be as game to play with it or to interact with it. But since we're all bored right now, we're all on our phones, and we're all trying to just get a little bit of that communication back and get that feeling of we're all hanging out together again, Facebook totally timed this perfectly, because people are doing it. People are making their avatars. Do you think you will be making an avatar? What are your thoughts on this new feature? More importantly, what are your thoughts on the timing and the marketing behind the feature? I definitely will not be making an avatar, but it's because I really only go on Facebook to look for news for this podcast. If that, I don't really use that as a news source. This one just happened to come up. So it's definitely not for me, but if it is for you, let me know in the review down below, or of course, reach out through social media. Our third news story, guys, I'm not going to lie to you. This has nothing to do with marketing, but I needed everybody to know. 11 puppies worth nearly $48,000 were stolen from a Petland in Rome. The robbery took place at about 7:30 a.m. on Sunday, according to Rome police. Officers said 11 puppies worth $900,000 were stolen. This is the fourth time that the thieves have broken into this exact Petland store and stole thousands of dollars worth of puppies over the past few weeks. According to a witness, 3 men were seen near the store between 3 and 4 a.m. The report said an employee called 911 hours later when she arrived to start her shift. The stolen puppies varied in price from $2,900 to $7,300, according to the report. The breeds of the stolen dogs were including an English Bulldog, Aussie Keeley Kai, Boston Terrier, a Cavajon, French Bulldog, Great Dane, Pug, Shiba Inu, Victorian Bulldog, West Highland Terrier, and 2 Yorkshire Terriers. Guys, this is the crime of the century. What is happening? I was so flabbergasted when I saw this story that I knew I just needed to include it in the marketing podcast, if not just to get your minds like ready and awake, because if that story doesn't wake you up, nothing will. That's freaking insane. Let me know what your thoughts are on this story, because I just think that's so crazy. I can't believe that happened. I am shocked that it happened, and honestly, I do not have a response, but I would love to hear yours. For now, everyone, though, we are going to go ahead and take our first break of the podcast, but when we come back, we are going to get into our top 5 distractions that are keeping you from completing your marketing goals. So stay tuned for that, because you're listening to the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie Jaquish, and I'll be right back.
You really can't underestimate the importance of having the right creative work for your brand or your product. Whether it's a logo, a website, a book cover, or an ad campaign, you really need a quality design to make that big difference pop and deliver your overall engagement and success in a competitive market. That's where Design Crowd comes in. Design Crowd has over 750,000 designers from Sydney to San Francisco ready to help you with awesome creative ideas. They make crowdsourcing work for you. So if you need a logo or you're working on your creative branding, you can go to designcrowd.com and post a brief describing the design you need. And then within about 2 to 7 days, you'll receive up to over 100 different designs from designers around the world. Then you pick the best design and approve payment to the designer. So you're only paying for the design that you want. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of freelancing and out of crowdsourcing. And you don't have to be a huge company like Harvard Business School to use Design Crowd, although they have used it as well. You can start a project on Design Crowd for as little as $99. And if you go right now to designcrowd.com/health and wellness or enter the promo code health and wellness on their website, then our health and wellness listeners will receive up to $150 off of your design project. That's designcrowd.com/health and wellness or entering that promo code health and wellness.
Golden State Media Concepts Technology Podcast covers everything tech. The hottest mobile phones, tablets, games. We review it, rate it, test it. Whether you're Microsoft or Apple, Android or iPhone, we'll give it to you again. Black and white. The Golden State Media Concepts Technology Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie Jaquish, and on today's episode, we are talking about something that is going to seem very, very relevant to our current climate and to our current situations. But the truth is that this affects you no matter what. These are distractions that will keep you distracted if you are working from home, if you are working in an office, if you are working at a coffee shop. Because the truth is that we work in a very creative field. And for a lot of people, that is the appeal of the industry. And it's definitely one of the appeals for me to work in this industry. It can also be a major problem because we can find ourselves getting distracted or getting sidetracked on different distractions that really are not helping us accomplish our main goal. So what I have done today is compile a list of 10 different distractions that are affecting you right now while you're working from home. But I can promise you that there will be a part 2 to this podcast where we talk about the distractions that could be preventing you from doing your work in the office. Because let's face it, these distractions exist everywhere. So we are going to get into all of that and more on today's episode. What I would love for you guys to do, though, is to please comment down below in the review what your main distraction is at work. Is it something that seems really minor? Is it something you've been having a problem with? Let me know, and let's see if we can help each other figure out some answers. As well, guys, this is the marketing podcast, but if you're really feeling that organization bug or that cleaning bug right now while in quarantine, we actually have a lot of podcasts that might be able to help you out with that. Even if it's not a cleaning specific podcast, a little tip that I have for you is to play a podcast in the background while you clean, and then you tell yourself, by the end of this podcast, my house will be clean. And honestly, guys, it really does help you get you in the zone and help you get all your work done. So why don't you go ahead and check out all of the other podcasts that are available on the GSMC podcast network. I've really been loving the tech podcast lately. I did used to host it, but I promise that is not a biased answer. I just really enjoy Ben and his reviews of tech products. Another really great one, though, is the book podcast. So definitely go check all of those out and more if you are interested. For now, let's get into our top 5 distractions for what could be stopping you from completing your marketing work. Number 1, social media. Because we're in marketing, we have to spend so much time on social media. Guys, I end up spending, when I used to work directly with social media, I would spend hours a day on it. But here's the thing. It's not always the most productive. Yes, you need to know what trends are going on. Yes, you need to be aware of what your competition is doing. And yes, it can be a great source of inspiration, which I have talked about before. But the truth is that it's also the biggest distraction. So what I like to do, my main tip for dealing with this is to install one of those apps that tell you how much time you're spending on social media. And then be aware of it. Be aware of if you spend one day where you were on it for 5 hours, that's not good. You need to really pick a time that works for you and then stay within that timeline. If you can honestly say that you need to spend 3 hours a day on social media, then I need you to write out what you're going to do every minute of those 3 hours. If you can't justify the time, then you shouldn't be on there. And so that timeline could look like, all right, for 5 minutes, I'm going to focus on posting this photo. For 10 minutes, I'm going to work on editing that photo. For 5 minutes, I am going to be interacting and replying to comments. If you can solidly justify your 3 hours of social media time, then you deserve 3 hours of social media time. You get to do that. However, if you see that you're spending 5 hours on Instagram and you can't justify every minute of those 5 hours, then you need to start considering cutting back on how much you're using those platforms. Number 2, editing photos. For so many of us, we are our photographers, we are the models, we are the photo editors, and we are the social media mavens who have to post the photos. And because of that, it is so easy to bury yourself into a little hole editing photos. Guys, I cannot tell you how many times I have spent hours and hours poring over photos, editing them, and nobody can even see the difference between the original photo and the edited photo. Some edits are worth it. I want to make that so clear. If your photo is too dark, if it is blurry, if you need to add a special effect in, then it is absolutely justified to spend some time editing the photo. However, there are shortcuts you can take to edit your photos faster. Someone that I really like to turn to, her name is Mad Cray on Instagram, and she actually shows very little videos and very little tutorials on how she edits her photos and how she actually uses apps in her phone to edit those photos. Not to mention, if you spend one weekend getting together all your presets so that every time you take a photo, you can just use these presets, you will be in much better shape to quickly edit photos and get moving with the post. Number 3, food. Oh my gosh, food is by far my biggest distraction. This is definitely something that has happened during quarantine, but it is something that I notice I do even when I'm in an office. Food can be a huge motivator, but it can also be a huge distraction. If you tell yourself, oh, I'm just going to go up and get a few chips before I write this social media post, next thing you know, it's been like 20 minutes of eating chips and that social media post has not been posted yet. Because food can be a big distraction, it can actually also be a big motivator. What you need to do is set out specific times you are going to eat, including your snack times. That way you can tell yourself, okay, at 1:30, I plan to have a small snack. So I have to work as hard as I possibly can until 1:30. And then at 1:30, when you have your snack, don't worry about working. You're on a 10-minute break. Take your time, eat your apple, eat your chips, whatever you need to do. But don't be thinking about eating when you're working, just like don't think about working while you're eating. Number 4, area. Guys, the area you're in, your desk, your room, your office, your bathroom, doesn't matter where you are working, your area needs to be clean. And I can tell you the honest truth, I never do this and it sucks. Honestly, the few times I have actually taken time to clean up my area, I can tell that I am more productive. I can tell that my work makes more sense and is easier to just flow through it all. Right now, I am recording my podcast in my living room and all I can stare at are the 2 empty cups of bubble tea that I have sitting on my island. Why can't I just get up and throw those away? Instead, I get stuck in this pile of just a messy apartment and it is distracting and it is not good for my productivity. So don't be like me, be better than me. Make sure you clean up your area and your space before you start working. That way you have a clear area and a clear mind to really push ahead and get all your work done. Number 5, data. Guys, first of all, side note, we did an entire podcast where we talked about data. We poured over the numbers with you. We have talked about it multiple times throughout every single episode. But although I truly, truly do believe data is so important, I also do know it is quicksand. You look at one spreadsheet and suddenly you are creating 20 other spreadsheets about one little number error you found. It can be impossible to get out of that quicksand. It can stress you out so much that even if you do move on to a different task, you are still thinking about the data and you're still thinking about the spreadsheets. So what I recommend doing is saving your data and saving your spreadsheets until the end of the day and giving yourself a strict amount of time that you will work on it. You are only going to look at your data for 1 to 2 hours, and even if it's only 30 minutes can do a lot of work for you in that area. So schedule out the amount of time you think you need and then stick to that. I just recommend not doing over 2 hours because, again, quicksand, you'll get stuck and you won't be able to sleep. So there you have it, folks. There are our top 5 marketing distractions that could be preventing you from doing your work at home. We are going to go ahead and take a short break from the podcast, but when we come back, I have 5 more distractions that could also be preventing you from doing your best. So stay tuned for that because you are listening to the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie Jaquish, and I'll be right back.
You really can't underestimate the importance of having the right creative work for your brand or your product. Whether it's a logo, a website, a book cover, or an ad campaign, you really need a quality design to make that big difference pop and deliver your overall engagement and success in a competitive market. That's where Design Crowd comes in. Design Crowd has over 750,000 designers from Sydney to San Francisco, ready to help you with awesome creative ideas. They make crowdsourcing work for you. So if you need a logo or you're working on your creative branding, you can go to designcrowd.com and post a brief describing the design you need. And then within about 2 to 7 days, you'll receive up to over 100 different designs from designers around the world. Then you pick the best design and approve payment to the designer. So you're only paying for the design that you want. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of freelancing and out of crowdsourcing. And you don't have to be a huge company like Harvard Business School to use Design Crowd, although they have used it as well. You can start a project on Design Crowd for as little as $99. And if you go right now to designcrowd.com/health and wellness or enter the promo code health and wellness on their website, then our health and wellness listeners will receive up to $150 off of your design project. That's designcrowd.com/health and wellness or entering that promo code health and wellness.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie Jaquish, and on tonight's episode, we are talking about distractions. Right now, we are in the middle of a quarantine lockdown. The coronavirus, the COVID-19 pandemic is outside, and it itself is a huge distraction. If you are looking for a distraction from that distraction, I highly recommend checking out the GSMC Podcast Network. Yeah, it might seem like I am promoting our podcast network within this podcast, but if you knew how much content there really is on the GSMC Podcast Network, you would understand why I feel the need to promote it so much. Guys, there is content for everyone. If you're looking for sports, beauty, cooking, cleaning, hair, makeup, tech, marketing, business, we have absolutely every kind of podcast out there. And I know all of the hosts, I follow all of the hosts, and I can say they are all so wonderful and so committed to bringing you excellent content. So do me a favor, do yourself a favor, and go check out some of the other podcasts we offer, because I promise you will not be disappointed. But for now, let's get back into our list of the top 10 distractions that could be keeping you from your marketing work. Number 6, editing copy. So before the break, we talked about editing photos and what a molehill, rabbit hole, whatever you want to call it, could potentially exist when you start editing photos. But the truth is that molehill, rabbit hole still exists when you are editing copy. For me, it actually exists more with copy, especially when it comes to short little Instagram captions that you have to write. Guys, you could be stuck on that for hours. Very similar to the photo editing, what you need to do is plan ahead. What I used to do when I worked directly for social media was I planned out our content months ahead, sometimes 3 months ahead. One time we planned it out 5 months ahead. The more prepared you are, the easier it will be to post on a day-to-day basis. Now, that being said, it can be very hard to sit down and crank out 60 different Instagram captions or even 100 different Instagram captions. So what I suggest you do is, again, set that timer for 1 hour and get out as many as you can, and then take your break. Take your snack break then. This way you're able to concentrate on your goal in smaller chunks rather than looking at the whole 100 posts you have to write or whatever number you end up picking. But either way, it'll become a whole lot easier to just go and post every single day if you already know what you are going to post. And if you have to end up editing the copy a little bit, it's a whole lot easier to edit something you already wrote than writing something from scratch. Number 7, budgeting. Especially especially right now, this could be a big distraction. We talked about how data can become a distraction because you're poring over spreadsheets and you're creating spreadsheets and you're just going crazy with spreadsheets. Your Excel spreadsheet is just going insane right now. It is overworked. So very similar to the data tip I gave, I'm going to give it again with this budgeting one. Save it for the end of the day. Save it for the end of the week if you want to dedicate an entire day to it. And then make sure that while you're doing that work, you are hyper focused on it. You put on your white noise, you put on your noise canceling headphones. Nobody is going to be bothering you because you are working on your budgeting right now. But then the rest of the time, don't think about it. Keep it out of your mind. It is not important the rest of the time. You are dedicating specific hours to it so that it doesn't keep pulling you away from your other work. Number 8, guys, it pains me to say this, but brainstorming can be a huge distraction in the marketing world because it is the fun part of the marketing world. You can spend hours and hours brainstorming an idea when the truth is you came up with the best idea within the first hour of your brainstorming session. And you might really start liking this one idea that you've come up with after 5 hours of brainstorming, but then you realize, oh wait, this doesn't actually solve our problem and this has nothing to do with our company or our brand. So we should probably just go back to that first idea we had. And there you have it. You've just wasted 4 hours. So what I recommend doing is having a big white sheet of paper in front of you, and all the ideas you can fit on that white sheet of paper are the only ideas you get to use. Once that is filled, you are done. If you make columns that say idea 1 through 5, then all you do is 5 ideas. If you create a map for one idea, then you are working on that idea. This way you can stay a little bit more organized. It is a visual representation of your work and your progress, and you won't get distracted and sidetracked with all these other ideas. Number 9, by far my biggest one. This is my Achilles heel, YouTube. Do not listen to your music on YouTube. You can listen to white noise on YouTube, but if you're someone who likes to listen to music while you're working, don't use YouTube. Those ads will get you every time. You may not think that you are interested in seeing the commercial for Taylor Swift's new upcoming concert, but once you hear her talking, you'll be like, oh, I should flip my phone over and take a look at that ad. And then suddenly you'll be on a rabbit hole of Taylor Swift's behind the scenes videos, and poof, there's 4 hours gone. So listen to your music on Spotify or on your actual music app. Do not use YouTube. If anything, during your workday, hide your YouTube app for you, because that is just a rat's nest that you do not want to get involved with. Number 10, people and teammates. If you are using some sort of IMing system right now, then you probably fully understand what I am talking about. People will constantly message you. It could be people you live with too. My roommate and I have both had to work in our 1-bedroom apartment, and things get tight. It's easy to distract each other, even if you're just sneezing. So what you really need to do is have some sort of signal to your teammates through IM or to your roommates or to your children that during these hours I am going to be head down working, so I cannot answer and I cannot help on any of your questions or any of your projects. Dedicate time for your heads down work and know your limits, so that if you need to really be focused on this one thing, don't be trying to help other people with their projects. You are dedicated to your work during that time, but once they're out of that time area, you are absolutely able to answer their questions, have a meeting with them, brainstorm with them, help them edit their photos, whatever it may be. But during your hours of 10 till 1, you are heads down, you are focused, and you are working. Okay, everyone, that concludes our list of the top 10 distractions that may be preventing you from getting to your marketing work. Thank you so much for listening to the GSMC Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie Jaquish, and I'll see you next time.
You've been listening to the GSMC Marketing News Podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcasts on SoundCloud, Stitcher, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to any podcast app and you'll find all of the shows from the GSMC Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, from business news to weird news, you'll find it all on the GSMC Podcast Network. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.